the American Revolution. Um, I'm fascinated by how it's become part of our mythology, yet how little we really actually know about it.
Man, I've read the Washington biography, the one that came out just recently. What was it? Who wrote that?
Ron Chernow?
Yes, yeah, it was fantastic. I didn't actually finish it. I'm one of those horrible people that pick up many many books at the same time, and will get about three-quarters of the way through or halfway, and I'll pick up something else and end up losing its place, and we'll never go back to it. But I was fascinated by the idea that Washington actually was desperate to join the British Army, desperate for it, and he kept getting turned
Oh,
away.
yeah.
I mean, not just. I mean, he had. I guess he was a part of the British Army at one point, but he wanted more. He wanted to go higher.
Oh,
And
yes. Oh, he was part of the militia attached as a special liaison to Edward Braddock, but that was not enough for him. He really wanted that red coat. He wanted to be part of the British hierarchy. Washington, even our Washington that we know of, was very enamored of British society and British culture. He bought all his furnishings over from England and had them carted over. He was very much a British file.
it's fascinating to think that that the British lost him over taxes. That they just kept stealing. They're not stealing necessarily, but they taxed the citizenship more than he necessarily wanted to pay, according to that biography that I read. If they had treated him fairly, then he probably would not have fought against the crown as well as he did.
Well, I think that's the key point right there. It was being treated unfairly, being treated as a second-class citizen, being treated as not British, really tipped a lot of colonial animosity against the British.
He wasn't the only one, though, either. In my opinion, obviously, it takes more than just one person to start a revolution. And Boston was the hotbed of the revolutionary, fire stoking in the colonies, right? I mean, would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And it is, there are points of departure that could probably veer away from the whole idea that the rest of the colonies joined in with Massachusetts. That was never a certain thing. Even when you would hear some of the early actions in the none of the states really, none of the colonies really cooperated with each other very well.
Yeah, and it was really. I mean, I live in a New York, New Jersey area. We're in New Jersey right now. We've got so much Revolutionary War history around us. I mean, you can't turn a corner without you seeing Washington's headquarters here. And I've been to a lot of the areas where Washington hunted. Towers over here and towers over there, and this is Washington's headquarters. It's truly impressive to think that you're walking in the footsteps of great people who risk their necks basically. It's would you do it? I mean, if it came to it, would you risk your everything to avoid paying some taxes?
That's a very good question.
Right. I mean, that's what he did. I mean, how old was he when he decided to do that? He was young. He wasn't an old man. He was in his 40s, right?
No, he was in his 40s. A lot of people have, again, it goes along with strange notions we have about our past. We've always pictured Washington as being this older man, but during the Revolution, he was really mid-40s, young, very strong, energetic.
And he decided to risk it all to start his own country, to pull away from his country. His country. I mean, and he was an Englishman. That's the thing that just drives me crazy. And he wanted desperately to be accepted by his country.
Exactly. And in many ways, he is England's Benedict Arnold.
Yeah, I mean, that's fascinating. So Your novel spoke to me when I saw you. I saw the article that you got featured in. Um, good. What was it? Local Boy Makes Good. Yeah, you published your work. Are you traditionally published, or are you an indie published?
I am somewhere in between. I am traditionally published with a small indie press.
Oh, okay.
Right there in the middle.
Congratulations on that.
Well, thank you very much. I was thrilled to be featured in the newspaper as well, but must have been a very slow news day.
Well, I mean, you got my attention, which obviously I'm a writer myself, so I like a good story. And it's unique. I started a piece not too long ago, actually a year ago, where I wanted to rewrite history with the idea that Washington wasn't involved in the Revolutionary War as a general. Instead, I wanted to make him a martyr. I wanted to remove him from the tactician side of things and just make him a ghost over the whole Revolutionary War, and maybe put like Henry Knox in charge instead. But you changed side. You made him on the other side of the ball. And do you want to speak on what that does for the Revolutionary War in your mind?
Well, it just goes. Well, Henry Knox is a great choice, of course, but it just goes to show you how fluid and not set in stone any of this was. There were many times that Washington could have been killed. He could have been killed during the retreat from New York. He could have been killed during 20 years ago in the Battle of the. There's lots of times for history to have changed. I didn't want to go ahead and remove him. I thought it'd be better or more interesting, compelling to have him switch sides, to see what would happen if our founding father was fighting against us. And I think what that does for the American Revolution is it really kind of makes them a little bit more desperate. They don't have a clear leader to look to. There's really nobody out there who can kind of take the reins and diplomatically and militarily the way Washington was able to.
Do you write from the perspective of the British Army, or do you write still from the perspective of the American Army? Or do you bounce back and forth?
About back and forth. I have perspectives from a militia soldier, a Hessian soldier, and of course the Benedict Arnold and George Washington are major POV.
Oh, that's right. That was another fascinating part of your novel, that you put Benedict Arnold as the commander in chief, didn't you?
I put him in a position where he might take that path. But again, Benedict Arnold is a bit of a scoundrel in terms of character. He's very heroic. He's very brilliant, but he's also very self-centered, somewhat arrogant and narcissistic. He likes to do
historically. No, was he a spy historically, or did he actually sell the American Revolution out?
Oh no, historically, our time.
I'm sorry, say again.
He absolutely did sell the American Revolution out. It was his goal to completely subvert it and to keep the Americans from winning.
Oh, so he actually did what Washington does in your novel. He traded sides. He was hoping for that commission, that British commission.
Yeah, oh yeah, he absolutely wanted the British commission. In fact, actually, he did end up getting not the commission he wanted, but he did get he fought several campaigns in various spots in the Revolution, most notably the capture of Richmond, in which Thomas Jefferson fled from. There is a point of departure where Thomas Jefferson could have been caught by Benedict Arnold and hanged by the British.
It's a fascinating idea. And do you play with the notion that Washington could be the Benedict Arnold of modern day?
Well, I think it really idea of my book, the idea of I think all alternate history is that choices matter too can have a profound effect. And
Yeah.
I think that the certain different set of circumstances that can be pushed past the tipping point. I think that's why the American Revolution is so fascinating because it could have done slightly different, and it could have made people do things differently they wouldn't normally have done.
What I want is to read your novel really badly, and I probably should have done that when I saw your novel because I was like, I'm like fascinated by the idea of alternate histories. I think that's probably one of my favorite, uh, parts of speculative fiction is the idea of changing what's already concrete. What are some of your favorites authors in the genre of speculative alternate histories? What are some of your favorites?
There's so many really good authors and writers in the field, and honestly, Harry Turtle had a huge, profound, as a younger reader. He drew me into the world, but once I was in the world, I read voraciously from Philip K. Dick to Sprague de Camp to Lord Moore. Bring the Jubilee is part of the alternate history genre. Harry Harrison and Sterling and Conroy.
Conroy. And is it hard for you to not borrow from the past from these authors? Are you forging your own way with the work, or are you taking from them kind of
So
their
I,
ideas?
I want to keep
I guess the
sorry.
question I'm trying to ask is, I mean, do you have an idea of what you want your future to be? Like when you steal a founding father, when you steal Washington, because he had so much impact in our government, right? He kind of had the two-term presidents and out. He had the representative government. He was the guy who basically, on his strength, our country was founded, right? And if you take him out of that, if you remove him from it, what do we have as a country? I mean, do you look at that going forward with your work as you're writing the
Oh,
Revolutionary War?
absolutely. Well, we get a little bit of the walking the dog, where the kind of need actually takes you through the era period, but we're going to have to deal with the fallout in the succeeding books. It cannot meant it can stand on its own, but it's also meant to lead to other things if the audience is there.
Where does that start? Did you get a degree in history?
I have a degree in history and a minor in sociology.
Sociology. Is this your first novel?
This is my first full length novel. I have several short stories published in various places.
Okay. What made you decide to start writing some fiction?
I don't know that I made a conscious choice about writing. It just sort of happened. Apparently, I've always been writing. I found a story I'd written probably when I was about 10 or 12, and I'm sure I was writing before that.
Okay, so you've always been into reading and storytelling. That's
Absolutely.
yeah. Are you working on something else right now?
I have a couple of different projects I'm working on. Follow up to a Tommy Mead, and I'm also working on a straight science fiction story set in the near future where the robots have already risen.
Are you of one mind with Stephen Hawkins? Is AI a horrible thing?
AI is just like any other powerful discovery or invention. It is both good and bad. I think we tend to focus more on the darker side I think it makes for more compelling and thrilling fiction. But personally, I also think that there's benefits to it as well. I
Yeah.
just tend to overlook them.
It's, we talk about AI, this artificial intelligence, being a bad thing. And I think to myself, there's nothing wrong with artificial intelligence. It's when the artificial intelligence becomes sentient. That's when we have to worry. It's not being intelligent, it's sentient intelligence that we have to worry about.
Yes, I do. As long as our computers don't have to update their Adobe and Steam every 5 minutes, I don't think we're going to have to worry about artificial intelligence against us. They'll be too busy updating their functions.
Right? We just have to constantly make their software obsolete every day. Would you like to update your
Yes.
software? Oh, damn it. I was going to take over the world, but no, now I have to update my software. Maybe tomorrow. Um, yeah, that's the best thing about writing an alternate history is that every single thing you change is going to lead to something different. And I think it's absolutely fantastic. There was an Orson Scott Card book, I think it's called Seventh Son or something along those lines, where he rewrote the Revolutionary War. And I think he killed all of the Revolutionary War heroes. And the British won or something along those lines. And I just found it fascinating. Right? I mean, a lot of the. Go ahead.
I'm going to say I have not read that, but I'll have to check it out.
Do you read primarily? Do you read science fiction and fantasy, or just science fiction?
I've been reading around on sort of like you, where I'll go to a bookstore and several different books from several different genres will catch my attention.
Mm-hmm.
I can't be faithful to just one book.
Yeah,
I'll
it's horrible.
look at another one.
I hate myself for it. I just read so much, and then it's like, oh, my mom was a librarian growing up, and she kind of did it to me. She'd bring home a stack of books, and I'd be reading through them all, and next thing I know, they're all gone, and there'd be a new stack of books waiting for me. I just start so many books.
Yeah,
So
no chance. You were already deep.
say it again for me, please. You kind of broke up.
You were already doomed from a young age.
I was already doomed. Exactly. The good thing, though, yeah, I do the writing thing the same way as well. Every month, I force myself to finish short fiction, but novels are terribly difficult to finish. Now I'm forcing myself every year to at least make a novel be done. I'm stopping the constantly starting a new novel. That's not the best way to do things. You have to finish the novels.
No,
Yeah.
no, and right now we're in November. It's National Write a Novel in a Month. Month.
Are you participating in that?
Absolutely. I may not write a novel in a month, but I definitely promote and encourage other people and write. And I write as much as I can myself. But the thing that really instills on you is you can keep going and don't stop until you have something somewhat complete where you can go back and start fixing it. Because if you just stop, you'll go off and do something else.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a nice feeling to have something that you can edit. A blank screen with a cursor blinking at you, ridiculing your ineptitude is not a good feeling at all. Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. This month is going to be totally dedicated to an edit.
No writer that I know of likes to actually write, but we all like to have written.
Yeah, that's very true. Very, very true. It's not necessary. I disagree in a way. I love writing short fiction. I love it. I love having an idea and actually getting it down. But you are right though. It's very intimidating to have that cursor blinking and
It's
those
much
first
more
couple
fun.
paragraphs.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Those first couple of paragraphs are killer.
Yeah, they really do. yeah, when you don't have an ending and you find yourself just, dangling over the black hole of, oh my God, I could write this thing forever.
Exactly. But you always, just in my personal experience, it's always best to go in with your ending in mind, even if you are a diehard, which is what they call pantser, where you just sit down and write.
Mhm.
If you know where you're going, you know where you're going to finish, you're going to have a much higher likelihood, in my opinion, and maybe that's not true for everybody, of actually finishing.
Yeah, totally.
Personally, I'm a plotter. I have to have an outline or a structure, but even still, I'm always writing the end first.
Plot. What are they? Pantser. I'm a pantser, and you are a
Yes,
plotter.
I'm a plotter. Yes,
Plotter.
I have to have
I am. I don't
an
even know. I'm
outline.
a pantser, but I need. I love a word count. I love a limit. I look for challenges and any kind of like hardcore word count situations out there. I think you're a member of the Roundtable, right? The Science Fiction Roundtable on Facebook,
Face group out there for writing.
right? What is it? The Science Fiction Roundtable, right?
Oh, well, yes, the Sci-Fi Roundtable is the name of the Facebook groups.
Yeah.
We're all Knights of the Roundtable.
Oh, okay. What they had, I don't know what happened to it. They were putting up photos occasionally or pictures occasionally
Oh,
and asking you to write 400 words or 500 words. I love stuff like that. That to me is the gold. I'll write 400 words. Boom, there's a beginning or there's a 400 word snippet, and I'll put it on my blog or something along those lines. And maybe one day, and I'll go back to that 400 words and write, 4,000 more words on it or something along those lines. That stuff I love. That stuff to me is gold.
I agree with you, and I'll prod them to do more of those. I think they might have just run out of artwork to post. In fact, the person who does a lot of those artwork posts did the cover for A Time of Need.
Oh,
So
really?
for real, absolutely. Shout out to Ian for doing such a great job on Washington wearing a red coat.
I'm looking. Your novel is called A Time of Need, correct?
A Time of Need.
I'm looking on your Facebook page, and I'm not seeing a link for it. Where's the best place to find it so I can look at it?
I should have a pin post on top of the page with a link, but it's on Amazon.com. It's on
Just look under
BarnesandNoble.com.
your name,
It's
right?
on
That's a good idea.
or the title of the book. Either way will get you there.
Okay.
Um, I'll make sure the link is up there. I have a My Book 2 link on the on my Facebook page, which is a universal link. That way, if you're in a different country, it will take you to the Amazon page, closest region. So you're not funneled into the U.S. Amazon.
Here it is. Okay. You're probably the only Brent A Harris, and you're like the fifth one down. Amazon is not friendly to indie authors at all.
Oh, absolutely.
I love the cover.
Thank you. That's
Where'd you
why
get the art from?
reviews matter.
Where's the art at? Or where's the art coming from?
Ian Bristow, a fellow knight of the Roundtable, he actually did that. He
Wow.
drew that.
The likeness of Washington is astounding.
The thing is, portraits of Washington show him askew. They don't show him
face on like
full
that,
on.
really.
So it was very difficult to get that right. And I know he went through several iterations of it. He did a really great job.
In a change of fate, George Washington fights for the British and wrestles with his loyalties as he watches his countrymen struggle. And you said you're currently writing book number 2 of this. So this is going to turn into a series. Do you know how long the series is going to be?
I have gotten a lot of good fan response, amazing stories. Matt over there wrote a really nice review for the book.
Now you're 5 stars right now with 7 reviews. That's awesome.
Yeah, so Definitely, there's going to be a follow up, and as long as people keep liking the books, I'll write in that series until the story is done. Now there's still quite a bit to tell.
Well, the thing is, you love this type of stuff. So, I mean, you're writing stuff that you love. So I can't see you having an issue with that, right? I mean, how long is the novel?
Oh, well,
How many?
I kind of went overboard. Mine is about 25,000 words over what you're really supposed to have for a novel. And the publisher is like, no, we love it. Just keep it. You're fine. It's alternate history. It can be a little bit long. So my book runs a little bit longer. But a novel typically is around 100,000 words.
Wow, your novel's 100,000 words. That's pretty
My novel is
significant.
138,000. Yes.
Whoa! Wow.
Like it's not a read that you're going to be able to do in just one sitting. You're going to have to invest a little bit of time into it. But I think, in a way, I've always appreciated books that I can immerse myself in. That is something you can go to and read every night, and join that world and be a part of that journey.
Wow, and you've been nominated for a Sidewise Award as well, huh?
I have for a short story. I collaborated with a friend of mine, Ricardo Victoria, uh, Twilight of the Mesozoic Moon, about time traveling dinosaurs. What can
And
go
this
wrong with
is,
that?
yeah, there's nothing. Time traveling dinosaurs?
Absolutely. Why not?
No, why not? That's my son would love that. He's only 2.5, but my God, I'm gonna definitely hook him. How long is that? Is it just short story though?
It's a short story. It's only roughly about 10,000 words.
Okay, that's not bad. That's about a novelette length type of work. No, that's pretty. That's neat. Sidewise. So how do you get nominated for something like that? Hello?
Um,
Okay.
uh, my computer decided it was done working, but I brought it back up.
Okay.
Um, basically, through the we submitted the anthology. It's the anthology is called Tales from Alternate Earths. We submitted that anthology to the Sidewise Award judges. I believe Stephen Silver is the head judge for the Sidewise Award. And apparently, a few of the stories were liked well enough that, and a fellow author and friend of mine, Daniel Benson, he was also nominated from that book, and he actually won. So I'm extremely thrilled and proud of my co my one of the fellow authors I've shared pages with. Daniel was awesome.
So the community for alternate history is pretty tight.
I would say so. I would say that very engaging. You even have people on some of these Facebook forums. I've seen people like Alan Snell, Eagles in Exile trilogy. He also is a Sidewise Award winner. Um, periodically chime in on some of the Facebook forums. Stephen Sterling is on there, and a lot of the indie authors like myself that have had their books out there. We're on there, and I have a fairly tight knit group. We're always trying to tell each other where they're wrong, and a lot of times that's a good thing.
And this book was Tales from Alternate Earths, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and I
Okay.
can also mention we have Tales from Alternate Earths 2 in the works. It should be out before the end of the year. We got some great stories, including a follow up by Daniel Benson. I'll be writing a different alternate history and for this book, and I have a story in there as well. So I'm very thrilled and excited about the follow up Alternate Earths 2 coming out.
So somebody that studied history, how does it feel to rewrite history?
science fiction, speculative component.
Yeah, no, but
That's
I
why
mean, you spent 4 years of your life memorizing the facts, right? Getting all the facts down, passing the test, getting A's, and now you're spending your adult life making up the facts, creating
exactly,
new facts.
and the research never stops.
Yeah, right.
New books keep coming out. Nathaniel Philbrick, known for writing Harry War, books, Bunker Hill, and in the Heart of the Sea. He just came out with a book about Benedict Arnold and George Washington. So of course I have that on my reading pile to go through. Uh, so new stuff is always coming out. You got to keep up to date.
Could you write an actual historical nonfiction book about the Revolutionary War now, based on your research, if you wanted to?
I could. I don't know that it would be as compelling and interesting to me at this point in time, but it's something I may do in the future. And there's certainly historical fiction that they write. Um, but right now, I like to play on a totally different world.
So, what's different about your world that you would like to share, that you can share without giving too much away?
To share, I want to. I'm excited about it.
So there's no spoilers.
Different.
I mean, that's what I'm worried about talking to you. Is like I don't want you to spoil anything, but I want you to tell me everything. You know, I'm afraid to ask you too much. So I'm like, oh, what won't he share?
Well, you have a leadership vacuum on the continental side, and so you have different types of characters vying and jockeying positions for position as head of the Continental Army, and some of these people chivalrous and nice as other people are, and so there's a lot of infighting that kind of compels a lot of the book. But once um, everything is, all the chips are on the table and the circumstances grow dire enough, they have to rally and get behind um, at least one individual to have a chance of defeating the best, well equipped and trained army of the world at that time.
So I know George Washington really doesn't affect the Revolutionary War until what, the Battle of Brooklyn, right? Boston probably still happens. The Boston Massacre probably still happens. Paul Revere's ride probably still happens to Bunker Hill. Right, that probably all still takes place. Uh, the Congress probably still happens, where they declare that they're going to fight, where they make a leadership pact with somebody. They have to put somebody in control of the Continental Army, and they're going to have to face the army in New York. Right? Is it going to be New York that they're going to face the British Army for the first time?
Yes.
Who is
where the component comes into place? You do. I mean, there are the social movements. Taking out Washington is not going to stop any of these, like you said, any of these other events from happening. And huge fan of the great man theory, although Washington certainly did some tremendous things. But taking him out in that early part, it doesn't have any sort of effect on New York and such.
I'm a great fan of his too, right? But he wasn't the only great man at play. And like Benjamin Franklin was at play. Thomas Jefferson was at play. There was Samuel Adams was at play. The other Adams was at play. There's a lot of great men working on the Revolutionary War. And what Washington did, right? And maybe you'll agree, he was a big figure personality-wise. He had that personality cult that people could muster behind, and he should have died. Like you were talking about earlier in the podcast, he should have died so many times. But that dude was brave. He just sat his horse, holes in his hat and coat, got horses shot out from underneath him, and all that good stuff. But man, he sat his horse. So I mean, what happens at the Battle of Brooklyn when they lost, right? They crossed the East River
Oh,
and fled to Manhattan in
yeah.
history.
The I agree that a lot of the stuff is going to happen as normal. We don't really dive into the revolutionary aspect until things start changing. I will say that the sake of expediency than any sort of political or creative reason, the Second Continental Congress, where Washington was put in charge of the army. That, in my book, goes to Hancock, General Hancock, who was also known for the largest signature of the Declaration of Independence.
So I didn't know that
Um,
I didn't know that John Hancock even had a military hand in the Revolutionary War.
well, not in our timeline, not a
Not
great
our
deal.
timeline. Okay.
And he, for some odd reason, I guess he expected to get the position. He certainly assumed that he was going to be nominated. In fact, I believe there's firsthand accounts and the primary sources of Hancock actually being completely deflated, almost like he's standing up to go get the to be recognized for the nomination, and then he's sitting down, kind of red faced and embarrassed. So in my world, he does get that. Whether he can keep it or not, there's a little bit of I don't want to say Game of Thrones component, but there's certainly a lot of infighting and squabbling between a lot of the major characters in the revolution, as there actually was in our timeline. There's a lot of people who are stabbing Washington in the back, saying that they could do a lot better job than he could.
So there's no idea that Washington's like this big continental secret weapon. That's why the British want to keep him. Like they don't recognize him from the French and Indian War. Going, that dude's got talent. Let's keep him on our side.
They recognize that he's popular. He is in the age of uh, no reality TV or tabloids and such. Washington goes off and in our timeline writes a pamphlet uh, detailing his exploits in the French and Indian War, and it's enough to elevate him to sort of hero status. The British are able to do sort of off camera. This doesn't really happen in the book, but they're able to kind of use Washington to say, "Hey, look, Washington is one of your own. You guys don't need to be rebelling up in arms." Use him basically as a British puppet, but they never really trust him. They never really think of him as their own. He might wear the same coat, the same uniform, but they don't see him as part of the British ranks.
In the French and Indian War, or when they
Oh,
in your
during the
novel.
Revolution.
Oh, during the Revolution.
Yes.
Okay, that's got to be frustrating.
Absolutely. In fact, when they give him the command, they give him the command of Hessians instead of British soldiers.
So they give him the command of a company.
He is
Colonel.
in charge of a regiment. He actually is overseeing two other regiments. So the Hessian structure is very odd and interesting how they did that. They would give you a regiment, and then they would give you a couple other ones that other people were in charge of, but you also oversaw.
So he would be over a Hessian commander. He would be the British commander over a Hessian commander. He would boss the Hessian commander as the Hessian commander is bossing his own German troops around.
Absolutely, because the British don't trust him or don't want him to have control of British troops, nor would British troops necessarily immediately want to follow him.
It's interesting. It's interesting that also, I mean, just to go back into the idea of your writing 100 and what did you say, 37,000 or 25,000 word novel, that your publisher allowed you to keep it intact like that and didn't make you break it up into two parts, into two novels.
I actually, that was one of the first things I suggested after I signed over the contract, and they wanted to go ahead and publish it. But it was like, should we? But the thing is, if you do that, it's not a complete story. There's no resolution to it.
How far into the Revolutionary War did you get into the novel?
The novel ends in 1778.
1778. Where is that in terms of the mystery?
Yeah. Well, in 1778, that would be, in our timeline, that would be shortly after the Battle of Monmouth in New Jersey, over where you're at. And that would be basically with the British fleeing occupied Philadelphia. So they got as far as Philadelphia, and they were overextended. The British in our timeline weren't going to be able to really keep Philadelphia, especially with the French becoming more involved in the war. So they actually fled back to New York, to their stronghold. In our timeline, about the summer of 1970. Wow, 1778. Excuse me.
So you're writing the second book now from 1978. It's contagious. Yeah. 1778 on till what? You're not going to finish the Revolution.
Well, the parts of the Revolution are resolved. Other parts are not. That would kind of give big spoilers away. But there's still more fighting to be had, because people want to fight.
It's fascinating. I'm really looking forward to seeing how you resolve it, because obviously George Washington's an interesting historical character. And, I want to fast forward through your series to see where you end up placing him in history. Also, I'd like to see him live a lot longer than he did, but I guess people don't live forever. They have to eventually die. Does he get to be president? Does he get to be vice president? Does he have to, relocate to England? Is there a Mount Vernon? Does he get to have kids? Were his testicles shot off in the French-American War or French and Indian War? Do answer that question. Do you have an opinion on that question?
I know that the historical record shows him very much as a ladies' man. He definitely liked the ladies, but I don't know. I don't have any answer as far as why he either chose not to or did not publish children, or was not able to publish children.
What was it? Typhoid fever, I think, is the answer to that. I think he had. I think he lost the ability.
Yeah, I mean, if that makes perfect sense. He had been afflicted with so many different problems.
18th century ailments, all right? I mean, he just went through the gamut of illnesses during his lifetime.
Well,
I don't think he was homosexual or anything, because he like you said, he liked ladies. Ladies liked him.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. He had a in our timeline. He had a huge boyhood crush on Sally Fairfax, and he wrote her love letters, even though she was a married woman. So that's a very scandalous activity.
Yeah, that's the thing about history, though, isn't it? Those letters, man, they don't go away. They could try to burn them, but they don't go away. Didn't Sally Lincoln, Sally Lincoln, who's Abraham Lincoln's wife?
Mary
Lincoln. Sally was not ringing true. Mary Lincoln burned all his letters, I think.
Right. Yes, we lost a lot of correspondence that way, and actually, you bring up a very good point. Washington was very much ahead of his time, where he actually he kept a wagon full of journals and paperwork having to do with the revolution as he was fighting in our timeline, and we know a lot of the revolution because of all the paperwork and notes that he took and carried with him throughout the campaigns.
And there are some descendants of his, according to lore. They're slave mixed children, maybe. Do you include anything like that, lore children, or did he even have a chance to buy land and get into being a landowner in your alternate history?
He still has Mount Vernon, because Mount Vernon would have happened before the. But I do address a bit of the slavery component, because that is a significant part of the revolution. It's not something you can really
you really can't gloss over that.
But Washington himself is not involved with that in this particular storyline that I've chosen to write, but there are other characters and other components that do discuss things of that nature.
What do you mean? I'm sorry.
Well, certainly you were talking about Washington possibly fathering children with slaves, and the slavery aspect. That is actually brought up in the book, but just not Washington characters that deal with
Thomas Jefferson for sure. Then.
Well, yeah, it's absolutely Thomas Jefferson. We have the documents. I'm not sure that I've seen anything with Washington. Surprise me if that came up, but
it might just be lore.
Odd if you can't have. What's that?
It might just be lore. Because he was married after he bought Matt. He was already a landowner when he married Mary Washington. Because he had bought land with his brother before he was married. That's why he was able to marry Mary, because he was already married. He was already a landowner and slave owner.
Yeah, Martha. Yeah.
Martha. God, man, I'm getting. Who was Mary? You said Mary. Haha.
Mary Todd Lincoln a moment ago, and then Sally before that.
Woo.
But,
wow. Whatever. Names. Who needs names? I don't know names.
Names are not important. Would Washington by any other name be a father of our country?
Yeah.
Actually, that's a good way of looking at the book.
Oh, did you just spoil it?
My gosh, no.
I don't need to read it after all.
I'll have to read. No.
I don't know. We can look at that when he got typhoid fever. He was always a rich man, though, right? In terms of he wasn't poor necessarily. He wasn't a what do you call it? His father had money, not maybe the most money in the Virginian colonies, but he was not a poor man. His brother had money. When he died, he did leave Washington money. So there was that.
Yeah, I think we call him upper middle class in our terms, but he was never as well off and wealthy as to kind of associate with him. He died very, very much in debt. But then again, I mean, he had the name, so he had the creditors, and he was able to get credit. It's not like he was living in poverty. So You're right.
And the thing about youth is that those wild oats are going to get sown, whether it's with, some nice lady down the block or, unfortunately, somebody you own. I don't know. I don't know.
I had just a good book on that. Check out Kindred by Octavia Butler. It's a very, very fascinating look at slavery and just how common that practice was for masters to be sleeping with their house slaves.
Yeah, that's exactly my point, is that they probably did it often. Octavia Butler, I've not ever read any of her work, but I was supposed to do a podcast about her with somebody I had already talked with, and it never materialized. I'm hoping that maybe after the new year, I'll touch base with that gentleman again and see if I can do it. But yeah, she's supposed to be a fantastic speculative author too.
Oh, she is
Vampires and whatnot.
fantastic. Yeah, she's a great science fiction and a writer. I highly recommend. I've just only read the one book, but I plan on reading her much more widely. Very fascinated by her prose and her storytelling and what she had to say.
Man, you got to be tortured way out there in California. You got to get your wife to be stationed out here.
Well, I wrote the majority of Autonomy while she was stationed in Virginia. And earlier you were talking about you stepped in the shadows of Washington. I was I visited Mount Vernon many times to do research, the Yorktown battlefields, and a lot of the historical places out there. So I know what you mean. It's very humbling where people lived and fought and died for our country.
Yeah, I got the opportunity to. Well, I mean, this isn't necessarily Revolutionary War history, but I got to see Gettysburg a few years ago, and just being there at that battlefield, standing on the hill and looking down over it is just an amazing experience. To think of all the people that stood there and faced each other and shot bullets at each other, and a pivotal battle of the Civil War is just incredible. Um, I lived down the street from where the Battle of Brooklyn was fought, and I didn't realize it for the longest time. Park Slope. I used to walk down that block and run down that block and do miles down that block. I used to run past where Washington used to have his headquarters, and I did not realize it. And it was amazing. Washington, I run down here where Washington had his watchtower, overlooking, Patterson. Like, I had no clue. If you stop and just pay attention for 1 second, you're going to learn that Washington is all over the place. Down the street from where I'm living, they used to march. I mean, all over the place down here. Mount Vernon, I've only been when I was a kid. Like to go again. Cannot wait.
Oh, it's actually a very large estate.
Yeah.
But it's a very beautiful home as well.
I don't even know. I've never been out to the Proving Ground. Not the Proving Grounds. Where are you? 29 Pines.
29 Palms out. Well, out here, I'm in the right by Joshua Tree National Park.
Yeah, it's supposed to be beautiful.
Ever seen one of those? I love it. For 3 months of the year, we're living in the worst heat you can imagine. But
I like how you couple that. I love it, but 3 months of the year, I'm living in like 130-degree weather.
Oh yeah. But see, on the counterpart to that, it's November 1st, and I'm still wearing a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, and it was 78 degrees, I think. It was beautiful.
But that's torture for me. I do not want to live, and I want clouds. I want rain. I keep the curtains closed in my writer's cave all the time. Mm-hmm. All the time. I do not like blue skies.
Yes.
What's that?
I do that. I'm the same way. I keep my writer's cave a little bit dark. I actually have the window blinds shut. I don't know why, but I've just always kind of preferred it a little bit darker.
Yeah, I think it's the introvert in us. We need the darkness or something. My wife makes fun of me, but I don't know. I can't stand. I want it dark. I have this one little light just on my keyboard. That's it.
I know what you mean. Yes, I agree, and I think that's a common trait between many writers. We do tend to be introverted, and we do tend to feel like we can best express ourselves through the written word. I'm kind of stumbling through this podcast as best I can.
Well, I really enjoyed talking with you, and next time we do talk, hopefully we can get a little bit better microphone situation on your end so that we can actually engage a little bit more intimately. It's just the feedback is murder. It's just like a hurricane of sounds, and It's just it's horrible on my end. Hopefully, it's not so bad on your end. You don't probably hear what I hear.
Well, I'll invest in a microphone, and if we need to meet up and do this podcast again, I'm, whenever you like to have me in.
Yeah, man, I love this era in history. If you can't tell, I could talk about it all day long. I love history so much. It's one of my favorite subjects, and the idea of discussing alternate history with somebody who would, fantasize about what happens if this person dies or this happened a different way we could do this all day long. But I'm sure you have, son to
I do have my kids. Yes, I have a son to avoid and kids to
oh yeah, I heard some screaming in the background. I'm very familiar with that sound. My kids are now sleeping, thankfully. To sum this up, I do ask 3 questions. The first question is, I kind of workshop it a little bit every time. It's a little bit different. As somebody who's written 125,000 word novel and is writing, the second book of the series and has been nominated for, awards, and you're pretty prolific. What would you recommend to somebody who is struggling to achieve something like yourself, who is trying to make art like you? What would you recommend them do to follow in your footsteps?
I kind of feel like I'm still kind of struggling along, just doing the best I can. But
best you can is a good piece of advice, right? Do the best you can.
Every day is going to be a new challenge, but if you don't try to do something, then you don't have anything. It's better to have something than nothing, right?
Yeah.
That's not very motivational.
No, it absolutely is, because that's absolutely true. I mean, it's a lot of people say, write something, because if you don't have something, then you don't have anything to edit. You have nothing to work with. I mean, that's beautiful. I think that really does work. And I think that it does flow with what a lot of people do say. If you don't try, if you don't do, then you don't have. And that works with what I agree with that as well. My second question is, what are you reading? I bet it's something. What's on the list of things that you've got on your nightstand or on your tablet?
Oh man, I have quite a bit. As mentioned, I just finished Octavia Butler, Richard Walter's screenwriting book on my nightstand that I'm going to be reading in the next couple of weeks. I'm a big fan of independent authors. I have a couple of independent author books on my Kindle that I'm currently reading. Like I said, I'm just like you. I read around. It's hard to focus just on one book. And then I have some old classic science fiction that I'm reading. I'm really looking forward to getting to Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked. I have, but I just haven't. Yeah, Something Wicked just many times.
Good stuff. My last question for you is, where can we find you on the World Wide Web?
My author website is my name, Brent A Harris.com. That will funnel you over to my Facebook page and my Twitter. And, you can check me out on Amazon. I have an author page in the UK and out here. I have a follow on my Amazon author page. You just look me up by my name, Brent A Harris, and you can find a link to all my works on my website as well. So that is the ground, the hub, as it were, to get to everything else.
Perfect. Beautiful. And man, thank you so much. As soon as you get a headset with a little tiny mic, it doesn't have to be anything special, like $20 or whatever. Let me know, and I'll have you back on, and we'll chit chat for another hour about alternate history and whatever you got. I really enjoyed this conversation as is. It was really, really a wonderful thing.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. You have a great evening.
Thank you. Take care.